This is One Sentence News, a daily podcast featuring 3 news stories with a sentence-long summary and 1 sentence of context apiece. I'm Colin Wright. It's Thursday, January 6th, 2022. Let's talk about the news. From the Wall Street Journal, Kazakhstan's government resigns amid unrest over fuel prices. A long-planned change to the price of some types of fuel in Kazakhstan has sparked protests which became violent and which have resulted in the declaration of a state of emergency and 2-week curfew, the burning of the president's residence, and the resignation of the government. The governor's residence in the country's largest city, Almaty, was also set on fire by protesters, and official numbers from yesterday indicate 8 police officers and National Guard members have been killed, and more than 300 injured. No numbers are available for protester injuries and fatalities, though the police and guard fired live rounds into crowds several times and used tear gas, concussion grenades, and water cannon in freezing weather. So it's assumed there will be some human costs on the other side of these skirmishes as well. The Kazakh government has reached out to local Russian authorities for security support, and protesters have pivoted from simply demanding fuel prices are lowered to in some cases also demanding democratic reforms in a country that is ostensibly democratic, but in practice, not so much. From The Verge, plans to capture CO2 from coal plants wasted federal dollars, watchdog says. A recent report by the U.S. Government Accountability Office, which is a legislative agency that keeps tabs on how the federal government is doing, says investments in carbon capture and storage projects by the government have amounted to little of note. The goal of these projects was to capture carbon dioxide output at the source, in this case as it's released from coal power plants, and to then store those emissions in such a way that they don't end up in the atmosphere. About $1.1 billion has been provided to such projects by the Department of Energy since 2009, and that funding was funneled into 6 coal plants, only one of which was actually finished before being shut down in 2020, and 3 industrial facilities, 2 of which got off the ground with mixed results. These sorts of projects are about to get a $2.5 billion injection of funds, with another $6 billion being made available for infrastructure to help pump the captured emissions to underground storage sites. So it's being seen as a good time to figure out which options show the most promise to avoid throwing more money at bad technological and corporate bets, hence this report. And from the Los Angeles Times, PG&E power line sparked the nearly million-acre Dixie Fire, investigation finds. An investigation has determined that energy company Pacific Gas and Electric was responsible for the so-called Dixie Fire, which burned through 963,309 acres of mostly western U.S. land and destroyed more than 1,400 structures between July 13th and October 25th, 2021. This is not the first massive fire that PG&E has been found guilty of starting because of lax equipment maintenance. A faulty transmission line started a fire that wiped out 77,000 acres of Northern California in 2019, and the Dixie Fire seems to have been started by a tree touching one of their power lines. But it does seem like all the lawsuits and guilty verdicts associated with these fires may have finally forced their hand in terms of upgrading their equipment, as they've now committed to burying about 10,000 miles, which is just over 16,000 kilometers, of power lines, in addition to undertaking other risk reduction efforts in the coming years. If you're finding some value in One Sentence News, consider leaving a quick review wherever you get your podcasts and/or sharing the show with a friend. You can find out more about this show or subscribe to the email version at onesentencenews.com. And you can support this and other related projects, like the Let's Know Things and Brain Lenses podcasts, at understandery.com.